Hello, welcome to WD18, the Watford fan channel. Welcome to another match reaction. The first one after the international break. It's ended in defeat. Watford 0, Wolverhampton Wanderers 2 at Vicarage Road. Not a great game, Sam. We're doing it a day later, and I'm still really frustrated yesterday because we'll get into it. But you did feel
Yeah.
the game had gone both ways at about 60 minutes, and we come away with a 2-0 defeat. But Sam, look, first off, mate, how are you getting on? And thanks for stepping in, by the way, for the last video.
No, don't worry about it. I really enjoyed that actually. I saw Shane outside the ground before the game. We were saying it was really enjoyable. But Jacob, it's you who holds it all together. It's like you can't have your front three without your missing striker, sort of thing. So that's just like
Garlo and not Vidra of 2014.
Exactly that. But yeah, no, I'm all good. I think the game yesterday was so frustrating. I think so many things about it. If we're just going on to it, I feel like I don't know why everything just felt a bit flat in the stadium. On the pitch, the atmosphere felt a bit flat as well. And you could just tell, I think, the first 20 minutes was absolutely shocking from us. There was absolutely no control in the game. We pretty much gave the ball away every single time we had it, gave away a lot of needless fouls, which is something that really bothers me because it's something that, ultimately get punished from in this league against stronger sides. And then I thought we actually really grew into the game. I thought it was one of those, for bringing out the football cliches, we didn't want the halftime whistle to come. I thought we were, getting closer and closer to that Wolves goal. And, we were starting to control the game. But then I just thought in the second half, we just didn't really come out. We didn't really come out of the dressing room, and Wolves pretty much looked like the only side to win it. And I think the moment that Josh King came off, I didn't think Josh King had his best game, but he was a focal point up top. He was a physical presence. I felt as soon as he came off, I thought that's when we lost any sort of structure and Wolves were able to go on and win the game. I thought 2-0 flattered us. I think it could have been 4 or 5, to be honest. I think Semedo missed a couple of good chances. I think Jimenez missed a fantastic header. And I know that's not how football works and that's all hindsight, but a lot of questions. And that's just my thoughts on the game as a whole. But I suppose that's how I am at the moment. I'm just, except for that, I'm good. Yeah.
It turned into thoughts on just your life in general for a minute, and it just like about Watford. But no, to be honest, I agree with everything you said there. I think, as we said, touched on at the top of the show, it felt like 60 minutes. A couple of the right substitutions and being made proactively, the game could have quite easily swung away. But having said that, though, Sam, you mentioned, you know what? Let's strip it right back. Let's take it right to the start, kind of work through it chronologically before we delve into it. Before we do get into that, guys, please do leave a like on the video if you enjoy. Thank you very much to everyone who's joined us this evening on this Sunday evening to talk about a Watford defeat. I know there's better things to be doing, but we really do appreciate you coming to join us. And make sure you do subscribe to the channel. We've got plenty more content, and one video that's coming on the way. I don't know if you could see in the background, I've got my
Monday night football with Jacob Coleshaw.
we got a tactics board here, and I'm going to watch back. Well, yeah, I'm going to watch back the Wolves game and just kind of analyse and see where we can improve on going into Norwich and where we kind of lost the game. But we'll get Sam's thoughts as well on it today, and also yours. So make sure you do leave your comments in the comment section. Sam, let's take it right back to the lineup when it was released. I was really happy. I was really happy about the lineup. Were you feeling confident when that lineup was released at 2 o'clock?
Yeah, I was really happy. I was particularly with the fullbacks. I was really happy to see, not necessarily seeing Messina drop, but seeing Danny Rose come in. I thought it was a good time to see, what he was made of, particularly having an international break where he was able to get his fitness up even more, to get to know the group a bit better. And also it was really good to see Jeremy Ngakia. First time this season, I think, that we've started with a natural right back, except for that Carabao Cup game. And I thought both of them had really good games yesterday, actually. I think a couple of moments Rose struggled. Perhaps that was fitness more than anything else. But I think he looks like a real asset to us when he fully gets up to speed. And the midfield was probably what most Watford fans would have asked for, with Kutska, Peter Etebo and Musa Sissoko. We'll come on to those 3 performances later on in the video. And I think the front 3 was as expected for a lot of people. So I was really happy with the lineup. Little bit not disappointed not to see João Pedro on the bench, because you kind of have to ease these players back in there, but would have liked to see him on the bench, and I think he's going to make a massive difference when he is back.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Sam, again, mate, and I don't want to just kind of, just echo what Sam's saying here, but I looked at the lineup with, we'll just read it out again. So it's Backman, Ngakia, Troost-Ekong, Sierralta, Rose. In holding midfield was Peter Etebo, Ismail Assar on the right, Sissoko, Kutska, the other 2 midfielders. and then Phil Dennis on the left, and Josh King through the middle. And Sam, on paper, I was really happy that I thought that was the best team at our disposal. But actually, in the end, it kind of turned out that it was more concerning that we put our best team out, and particularly the second half, that performance was not near the levels that I expected. Can you potentially think of reasons why that was? Was it the international break? Was it maybe the way we set? Maybe not the way we set up was probably the wrong. But maybe individual performances? Was it simply not Cisco Munoz making the right subs at the right time? What was it for you? If you had to pinpoint a couple of things.
I think it's a combination of things. I don't want to say anyone in there had an absolutely terrible game, because I don't think anyone did. Because I thought, there was probably about a 20-minute spell towards the end of the first half where we actually looked really good. We're getting the ball wide to Sarr. Dennis was getting more and more involved. Musa Sissoko was picking up the ball and running at the defence. I just feel like, for me, a massive one is concentration. I think we have seen so many times already this season, whenever we've conceded goals, it's often down to concentration. I look at the Villa goals, with except for John McGinn, the penalty we gave away, concentration. Giving away from a set piece, concentration. Troost-Ekong giving the ball away, concentration. Daniel Bachmann, concentration. All these goals we're conceding seem to be from individual errors where players are taking their eyes off the ball and, just kind of losing their bearings. And I think that's what's so frustrating, because we'll come on to Cisco Munoz, but what you can't blame him for is the goals where we're conceding from individual errors and where players need to be doing better within themselves. Saying that, I thought the subs were really poor yesterday. I'm a big Cucho fan, but I think it was not necessarily the wrong sub, it was at the wrong time. Particularly with how strongly we ended the first half. I thought it was a bit weird to make that in the 55th minute or so. And also, I just thought at times we looked like we were sitting off Wolves too much and giving them the initiative to attack us. And we were almost saying, run at us, basically. And with the threats of, I was really impressed with their guy in the middle, Trincao. I thought Adama Traore did all right yesterday. His end product could improve. We could talk about Adama for ages, interesting player, but I just thought we gave them the initiative to attack us. And whether that's a mentality thing or the international break, I don't know. But it's something that we've seen too much already this season. It's something that we need to improve.
Yeah, that is a great point about individual errors, because ultimately Cisco Munoz has come under scrutiny. Look, it's 3 games. It's 3 games without scoring. To be honest, we haven't really looked like scoring, potentially apart from that King chance in the first half yesterday. Pretty non-existent going forward. So, Sam, when you see the comments online about Cisco, and I think we'll go into this kind of conversation in a minute, there is a sense I'm getting on social media, and let us know in the comment section, that the pressure is starting to mount on Cisco Munoz already. It's been 4 games, as I mentioned, 3 defeats on the bounce, 3 games without scoring. As I said, we look like scoring, a number of individual errors. From your point of view, is that kind of mood you have towards Cisco at the minute? And in terms of that, the next 2 games seem to be really pivotal, actually, even at this stage of the season.
Yeah, and it's such a difficult one, because I would say on a level with Javi Gracia and maybe Zola, even though I was much younger in the Zola era, I've never backed a Watford manager to do as well in my life. He seems like a genuinely top bloke who absolutely loves this football club. At the same time, there's no room for sentiment in football. And has it been good enough? No. In the championship, at times, was he naive? Yes. And is it carrying on to this season? Yes. That's nothing taking away from the promotion, because ultimately he turned it around last season and he is the main reason why we got promoted. The problem is, in the Premier League, it is a massive step up where he's coming up against better players with better opposition and better managers. There's the whole argument that we got promoted because we simply had better players. And yes, that did play a large factor in it. And in the Premier League, we are seemingly struggling because we are coming up against better players where we get punished for, for example, giving the ball away at the back or lapses in concentration, as I was saying. I'm not saying it's too early for him to go. I said this on Twitter yesterday, that if say we got, hypothetically speaking, if we got an announcement tomorrow morning saying Cisco Munoz has been sacked, which we won't, I can't lie when I say I wouldn't be disappointed. But at the same time, I'm not calling for his head, if that makes sense, because deep down, I feel like it is probably out of his depth. This isn't me. I mean, I've seen, people can twist words here and say that I'm calling for his head. I think he is out of his depth. That's not, I'll completely back him while he's in charge, and I'm not calling for his head yet. But I feel like these 2 games are completely make or break for us this season. I'll go as far as saying that, because with an international break after these 2 games, after that, we have such a hard run of games where we play the likes of Liverpool, we play Manchester United, Manchester City, and Chelsea. We aren't going to pick up points, that many points in those games, with being realistic. And these 2 games now, where who is it? Newcastle home, Norwich away, throw Leeds away in there as well. We have to get points in there. And I think yesterday was a massive missed opportunity, because with Wolves, the amount of chances they missed, I thought they were there for the taking, and we never really took the game by the scruff of the neck, and that was frustrating. So I'd give Cisco until the international break.
Yeah, that's a really interesting conversation surrounding Cisco. Let's have a look through your comments. Viobi here says, against Brighton and Wolves, he got the tactics all wrong. Both teams setting up with a 3-5-2 as well, which is an interesting point to add to that. But I still think we sack managers too early. We need to stop that. Luorn says too risky to give him Norwich and Newcastle, in my opinion.
You have to be loyal. Oh, look. I think that's a really interesting point, because I was speaking to a mate who's saying, a non-Watford fan who was just saying on Luorn's comment, a non-Watford fan, and he was saying, he'd watched a couple of our games, and I was thinking, and he was saying, I don't know if he's the right man for you, and I wouldn't risk giving him Norwich and Newcastle. And I think it's interesting, because I think every Watford fan's heart would love Cisco to do well, and they are backing it, and I'm backing him so much. I'm desperate for him to do well. At the same time, for being completely realistic, would you put money on him being here at the end of the season, being here in January?
To be fair, he was odds on. Well, not odds on, but I think he was the best odds to be the first manager sacked.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think it is too risky, because I still think it is too early in the season, and I think the players are playing for him. I think they are playing for him.
To counteract this, Sam, and I don't get me wrong, I'm losing a little bit of confidence with Cisco, not because it's his fault, but as you mentioned, he hasn't got a lot of experience, and he hasn't got a lot of experience with teams where, for example, he came in at Dino Sibalesi and they kind of ran away with the league. He came in at Watford. We had a little bit of a rough patch at Commentary away, which Don Goodman seems to harp on about every time he's on Sky Sports. From that point onwards, look, we went on an incredible run. How many wins was it again in the row? It was like at least 10 wins.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah,
wins, I lost count, but it basically was the run to get us up. This is the first time where he's managing a team, number one, where we're not a big fish in a small pond, and number two, where he's going to have to adapt a little bit more. And I think that was the frustration for me. I don't look at the team at the minute, mate. I think we have a plan B. There was time yesterday where I just thought, you know what, maybe switch it to a 3 at the back, or switch it to a different formation, and let's try different things. Maybe go a little bit more direct than we normally do.
I know, Jacob, you are
a plan B.
Yeah, I know you before the season. You were a big advocate for the 4-4-2, particularly with Troy still about. I don't know if that's changed now, but I saw you mention yesterday as well. You think perhaps 4-3-3 is the wrong formation. Do you think we should go to the 4-4-2?
It's a really good question, mate. I just don't think we've got the personnel potentially. I think the thing is, when you're in the Premier League with a team like Watford, let's be realistic. There are I'd say probably, at least maybe half the league have a better squad than us in terms of the money they have, in terms of the quality. The way we beat these teams is through our coaching and our tactics. I just feel like with the 4-3-3, mate, we are becoming a little bit predictable.
Predictable, I think, was the best word. And I think he tried to address that yesterday. I noticed quite a few times that the front three were switching places. There was one point where Sarr was in the middle, Dennis was on the right, and who else was there yesterday? Josh King was on the left, and they kept on switching it up. And I think that's to stop us becoming predictable. The problem is, it just looked like square pegs and round holes at one point as well. Players didn't really know where they were meant to be going, and I think it is it's really difficult. I think it's a problem as well that we don't know our best team. We don't really know how to use certain players to the best of their ability. I've seen a lot of fans saying that while Etabo's been good, we can use him differently and higher up the pitch, perhaps. So look, I think it's too early to. People are writing the season off already. Absolutely not. We've got so much time. We're 4 or 5 games in.
4 games in, yeah.
Yeah, the next 2 games are absolutely huge, and we have to, keep our heads up and get behind them.
David Prutton here with an interesting comment. Remember that both Spurs and Wolves are very decent sides we would normally expect to lose. Brighton was the only dreadful performance. We can't expect to win every game. It's not a championship. And Sam, look, just to counteract that point, with Cisco Munoz, is it just a case of us giving him time. And I know it's early, it is only 4 games into the season, but we are coming to 2 big games, particularly when you look at the fixture schedule. People say you're only 4 games in, but we do have a really tricky November. Not writing it off, but it's unlikely we're going to get many points. And then you're going into the Christmas period. And if you get on a little bit of a rot of losing games and not picking up points, it can become a really long end to the year. So just looking at that, what do you make of fans at the minute who are saying, look, Cisco Munoz, we've got to be patient with him. We've got to give him time. And actually, we don't want to continue the model of just manage at the first sign of the call and let the players take a bit more responsibility. What's your thoughts on that kind of argument?
Definitely. I think the players do need to take some more responsibility. I don't think it's a time to panic, but at the same time, and I wouldn't sack Cisco Munoz yet, as I said, at the same time, we have to make sure that when a new manager comes in, it's at a point where it's salvageable. Because, for example, we saw that when Javi went, we wasted 10 games of Kike, which was a waste of everyone's time, if we're being honest. And it was out of reach for Nigel Pearson, for being honest. We were close, but it was just too far. If it gets really bad, not at this point, and I'd say those next 2 games is where, if we don't win either of those, I'll be a bit concerned. That's when I think we have to address the problem. But, as the cliche goes, it's 1 game at a time. And I think the performance more than anything is what we're looking for as Watford fans for 90 whole minutes. I think we saw glimpses against Tottenham, the last 20 minutes against Brighton, about 15 minutes in the first half yesterday. Most of the Aston Villa game, we're seeing glimpses of what this Watford side could become, but it's just not consistent. Not just in terms of games, but in the game itself. And I think that's what we're crying out for more than anything else.
Yeah, just on the topic of Cisco, Hannah's said, too early to worry about Cisco. Can't expect him to be perfect straight away. Worth giving him longer, in my opinion. And then Charlotte as well says, Cisco's inexperience is showing. On the other hand, he might benefit from the support of an assistant coach manager with a stronger track record. Taylor had me, Boothroyd had Birkinshaw. So they're definitely, that's an interesting point actually with Cisco, the fact that potentially a more experienced backroom staff or
he's mates with Rafa Benitez, isn't he? Get Rafa in.
Yeah, we take it into Everton and continue that love affair with Everton, bloody hell. Right, I think we'll go back onto yesterday, Sam, just because we went onto the Cisco chat. I think one particular thing that stood out for me, and we'll discuss it more in depth on the Tactics show this week, is the lack of progression through the midfield. It happened at Brighton against the 3-5-2. It happened again against Wolves in the 3-5-2. I mean, Sierralta and Troost-Ekong, it's not really their fault, but they'd get the ball. They wouldn't see any options in midfield with Thibaut, Sissoko and Kutska, and they just go long to Josh King, and he was often isolated. Emmanuel Dennis wasn't really in the game. How do we solve that? Because it's, again, an issue that's kind of rumbling away. And it seems to be emerging it quite a few times as well, which is frustrating. I didn't see any sort of where I thought would change. It just felt like we kept trying to go long. We weren't trying to play through the midfield, which was a bit of a concern for me.
Yeah, 100%. I think the most telling moment for me was Danny Rose was just in front of the rookery at one point, and he had the ball and he just looked up and started, I don't know what he was shouting, but he was basically saying, who wants the ball, with his arms up in the air. And he was so frustrated, you could tell. I know it's a big change going from Tottenham to Watford, where you got the likes of, I don't know, Christian Eriksen, who can just pick up the ball and spread it out wide. I just feel like there's no one in that midfield who looks like they can progress the ball and create something with it. I even look at a club like, I don't know, for example, a club like West Ham, for example, they got the likes of, I don't know, Declan Rice or Thomas Souček, who at any point look like they can bring the ball forward, even though they're perhaps not the best creators. And I just feel like perhaps even though Sissoko at times was driving the ball forward, it just looks like no one really knows what to do with the ball when they've got it at their feet, particularly in the middle areas. And it's so frustrating. And I think, we're not going to go into transfer chat, but I think that's one area that we all thought we needed in the window. Letting go Zinchenko.
If we just, sorry, mate, just to interrupt, if we cast our minds back to the window, one player who did that very effectively is Will Hughes. And I know that this is hindsight, and I know there's so much stuff going on behind the scenes. It's boring, that whole chat. But the fact of the matter is, Will Hughes was that player, wasn't he, last season? He played in the number 6. He distributed the ball well. And I just don't think that's Peter Etibo's game.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Box-to-box player, personally. I don't think he's someone who just sits in and creates. I think when you play against the likes of Aston Villa, when they're going to have more of the ball, or if we go away from home and we know a team's going to have more of the ball, Atibo's quite a good player because he's very disruptive. He gives it to the more creative players. But in a game, particularly like Wolves, where they had a lot of the ball and we had a lot of, well, we didn't, when we got the ball, we need to use it effectively. Yeah. We weren't able to do that. Not just Atibo's fault. It was Kutska, who I thought had a real off day yesterday. I thought he looked leggy.
Yeah.
I thought Soko showed some.
I thought Soko looked all right. I thought Etiba and Kutska had really poor games, to be honest. Yeah, those
looked leggy. I think that was the international, mate. And I don't want to make players, but even Sarr I thought looked a little bit leggy. Yesterday. Kutska and Kutska and Sarr both looked leggy. I thought.
Yeah, I got slated. I said I thought Sarr had a really poor game yesterday.
What was your take on that? Because I'm going to be honest, man. I thought he had. I thought he had. Yeah, that's just Ismail telling.
He's not happy.
No. I haven't got a Sarr on my phone book. I wish. I thought Sarr was probably out the front three. Probably played the best personally. What was your take on it, Sam? Because I know you were quite vocal about him on socials.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was a bit harsh at the time. I thought he had one of his worst games in the Watford shirt. But watching the highlights back, he actually did seem like one of our most creative players. I think, first of all, I think Sarr in a way is a victim of his own success with Watford fans. I think he's set the bar so high for himself, particularly in the Championship last season, that whenever he's kind of not having his best game, I think it's really frustrating. And I think what was frustrating me yesterday was his decision making at times was really poor. I think he can slow the game down too much, and sometimes all his decision making can be rash. I think he's an absolutely brilliant player, and I'm a massive Sarr fan. I think he's so important to us if we stay up. And if we look at games such as even against Tottenham, I thought he was all right. I thought against Brighton he looked decent, and I thought Aston Villa he was absolutely superb. I just thought yesterday, I think he's missing Kiko, as Caroline just says straight down there. I think he misses having that kind of where someone can worry about, someone worried about Kiko, they take their eye off Sarr and boom, he's gone. I think he's missing that a tiny bit, and he's slowing the ball down at times. But I've got no doubt that Sarr will be back, and perhaps it was the international break as well.
I guess this is the issue we're having with the rotating fullbacks is there hasn't been a lot of consistency in that area. Messina has played obviously the first three. Danny Rose has come in. Then you've got Cathcart who's been playing right back. Then Ngakia's come in. And that relationship, I think, particularly in a 4-3-3, you need to be really on the same wavelength. And I think that's why Kiko and Sarr worked so well last season. But if you're continuing to rotate them, I also think...
Ngakia had a really good game, I thought.
No, agreed. Mm-hmm. I think, to be honest, mate, it's more from my point of view that Ngakia out of... you look at Ngakia and Kiko. Ngakia's a more defensive fullback. That's just the fact that compared to Kiko. Ngakia's a better defender, but Kiko's better going forward. But if you're changed, then you've got Cathcart, who's even more defensive than Ngakia, and then you've got Messina, who's not the same type of player as Rose. And I think, from my perspective, mate, in a 4-3-3, those fullbacks need to be on the same wavelength, and they need to complement the two wingers. I don't know if maybe Ngakia complements Sarr as well. That's not his fault, but do you know what I mean? The chopping and changing probably doesn't help either.
Definitely, and I think that's where perhaps you might be right that perhaps we should look away from the 4-3-3 now. I mean, I'd probably give it at least till the international break, but it's interesting to see what we do, particularly without Kiko Femenea, who's at least is very close to being fit apparently, which is a massive boost. I think he is going to be absolutely vital for us.
Sam, just honing in on that front three, I just wanted to get your thoughts on Dennis, King, Sarr. So you touched on Sarr there, but I think a big concern for me today, I think I looked at the expected goals and I think we expected 0.23 compared to Wolves' 2.5. I think that someone can correct me on that. It was around that mark. But the fact of the matter was Watford didn't look like scoring particularly, and the stats kind of it does back it up as well. So how do we solve this? Because, look, when you look at those players on paper, Sarr's proven it at Premier League level that he can deliver. But King is a player who scored 14, 15 goals in one season at Bournemouth, but hasn't really produced consistent numbers for a little while. And Manuel Dennis is a calculated gamble. And I like the signs of both of those players. But do you, as a Watford fan, feel confident with that front three in terms of us delivering goals? Or do we need to find another way of getting more chances in particular? Because the lack of creativity, not only in midfield, but in attack was, again, a little bit of a worry.
I think at least with I'm really confident Dennis will become good for us. I think he looks like a player. Seriously, he looks like he's one to get everyone off their seats in the stadium. And I think Josh King at times worries me. I think at times his body language is questionable. He shows sometimes a lack of interest, I think, in the game. And but some strikers I like that, where they can just burst into life instantly. And I think that's what we saw again for Bournemouth a couple of times. That was a game against Man United where he scored an overhead kick after not doing much for a few minutes. So interesting one that. But I think again it's a problem in midfield. We can't really judge them until they're getting these proper opportunities. I think there was one where the ball was played in by Sarr and King stretched to get it, but he just couldn't reach it. But it's a problem of progression in the midfield more than anything else.
Yeah, as TH says in the comment section, it won't matter who's up front if no midfield progression.
Mate, we could have Messi, Ronaldo, and Mbappe up front, but with that midfield, nothing's going in. I mean, that's something again. I think it's important to say as well. I don't think any of these midfielders are bad midfielders. I think they're really important to all of us. I just don't think they're that sort of player. I think we saw the same as with Nathaniel Chalobah. I thought in deeper positions when he was told to pick up the ball and spread it, he'd give the ball away every single time. And then when we gave him a different role, he was so good. It's just none of these players' jobs really to progress the ball. And perhaps that's Cisco being cautious, thinking we might get done. But we're not going to score goals like that ultimately. So we need to find a way of countering it.
I guess the again, I don't want to keep ramming home the concern because look, it is again only 4 games into the season, Sam. But the signs that I've seen so far is we're very much relying on Tufan to come in and hit the ground running and be that creative spark.
Yeah.
Or and loser to find some form as well. I don't see the 3 midfielders that are playing at the moment particularly creating any more than they are at the moment. You look at even the goals, Sam. If we're being critical about it, now when it kind of take the emotion out of the Villa win, you look at the goals that we scored.
Yeah, completely skipping out the midfield, just going. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the first goal that day, it was just Sarr getting in behind. The second goal was a counter attack, Dennis to Sarr, and the third goal was a wonder goal by Cucho. So it's I completely agree with you with that, and it's an area I feel like every season with Watford, there's an area that we're going to be worrying about. I feel like last season it was left back, the year before it was centre half. This season it's going to be the attacking midfielder. And I mean, we're not going to talk about January now, but either we address that position in the window, or João Pedro gets fit in place in the 10, or if Forest carry on being absolutely dreadful in the Championship, then we recall Philip Zinckernagel. It's one of those, and it's something that we can't wait till January. We have to find a way of addressing it, and if that means a change of shape, then I think it wouldn't surprise me if we see that.
Well, you just made a point about Philip Zinckernagel, who's got 1 goal and 1 assist at Nottingham Forest. They're really struggling at the bottom of the Championship at the moment. But Will in the comment section says, bring back Keena or Deli Bashiri from their loans. Bring some creativity into the midfield.
My Fulham mate said Domingos Keena was absolutely dreadful yesterday. I like Keena, actually. I was just saying, just complete side point. They lost 1-0 Fulham lost 1-0 at Blackpool, and apparently Keena was awful. So just that was just a side point. Sorry.
Interesting. But I guess the fact that we're even talking about this, about the creativity in midfield, as I said, mate, we are relying on, to be honest, I genuinely think it's as simple as this. If we're going to continue with the 4-3-3, we're pretty much relying on Tufan to come in and create. Like, I think it's as simple as that. Or loser. Cleverly isn't really that sort of player. I think we know. I think we did miss Tom Cleverly yesterday, actually, sometimes.
I said that. I thought it was a perfect game for Clevs. I'd have taken him when Etebo got booked. I'd have taken that, not as soon as it happened after 10 minutes, but I was thinking at half time, what sub should we make? And I was thinking Tom Cleverly maybe would have been a good one to bring on.
Yeah. Do you feel, this is an interesting question, Connor just popped into my head actually. Do you feel Cisco knows his best team?
No, and it's a problem, I think, as well. I think it's something that we've spoken about. I think we mentioned it in the preview that we don't know our best side. And I think it's good that we know probably our best goalkeeper and our 2 best centre halves in William Troost-Ekong and Sierralta. Except for that, who knows? No one knows who's going to start at left back or right back next week. No one knows what the midfield 3 will be. No one knows, with the exception of Sarr, who the front 3 will be. And we're 4 games into a massive season for the football club financially as well. And it's a problem. And it's something that needs to be addressed urgently, I think.
And that complemented with, as Kieran says, the subs weren't great with, he thought Dennis and Kutzka should have been hooked off, not King. Just on that, Sam, it did feel like that King substitution completely killed our momentum.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there was a really good run in behind, and I thought, you know what, he's getting to the game now, Josh King. Took a little bit of a while, but that, don't know, his body language went, crowd kind of just, you know, when you just feel something in the air.
I think that's why he was frustrated. He was coming off as well, because I think he thought after that run, he was like, now this is where I turn up. And as soon as that happened, he got taken off. I feel like it wasn't even necessarily Josh King himself, just the idea of Josh King we missed in terms of having that focal point up front, that kind of backbone. And Cucho didn't have his best game yesterday when he came on, if we're being honest. I thought as well when Ken Semi came on, I thought he looked really leggy and poor. That's probably the international break as well. So the subs were questionable, a bit strange, but yeah, it probably shouldn't have been King who came off, even though I thought at times in the first half he didn't look too good.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting conundrum. I'll tell you what, Sam. I'll put, just to answer your question about kind of like the formation I would go with. I do feel the strikers that we have. This is actually really difficult. I had a couple of thoughts actually of how we should set up. I mean, I've always really liked maybe moving to a 3 at the back system. I think that could work quite well. But I think that's one where it takes time to really kind of implement. I don't think that happens overnight, as we saw when PK's a different sort of manager when he came in. That it didn't work. And I think the thing is, Sam, and I think as Watford fans, we know Ismaila Sarr is the best player at the football club, right? So we have to put him in his best position. And look, I think it would be a different story if he wasn't there. And that's an interesting conversation to maybe talk about another day. But where can we play Sarr at his best? Now, I think we could probably play him at right midfield. I think potentially a 4-2-3-1 with Sarr on the right. I would probably interchange Dennis and King through the middle. I think Sema needs to come back in on the left-hand side for that defensive sort of cover, because when we don't have a lot of the ball, we need that extra protection for Danny Rose. And this is, again, nothing against Emmanuel Dennis, but he's not a player who will track back. I watched some of the Tottenham game back, and Messina was getting exposed so much, not only because he, defending wasn't great, but Dennis wasn't exactly protecting him. And he's not that sort of plays an attacking wing. He's not a defensive wing, whereas with Ken, that he will do the hard yards coming back. And there was a number of times yesterday I saw where Danny Rose, Atibo, Kutska were all saying to Dennis, I don't know if you saw, Sam, like it was just in front of me, obviously, and Taylor, and they were saying, mate, track back, get in your defensive position, because constantly, like the overlap from Wolves was always on, and Rose, unfortunately, a couple of times was getting a few tasty runs in behind. But Sam, do you think we continue with this? I know again. Do we continue with the 4-3-3 until the international break? Did you say?
I'd give it Norwich. I think we beat them with the 4-3-3 last season, and we battered them. I know they were already promoted at that point, so we can't read too much into it. But I feel like the 4-3-3 would suit against them. There's one thing I noticed as well, a big positive. I thought Sarr's offensively looked really good. I thought he covered Ngakia really well yesterday. An interesting point as well in terms of Sema coming back in. Apparently, Cucho's got really good defensive stats and really good with tracking back. So perhaps that's something that we can look at. I'm not too sure, but 100% that left-hand side needs stressing. Whether it's Rose or Messina, I don't think it matters. It's about who's tracking as well and who's protecting them on that side.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we could talk about this all day. I think there's so much to discuss about Watford, which on the one hand is really good for the videos because we could talk and we could get you guys more involved. And to be honest, we'd always talk about it, even if we talk about Watford. But at the same time, it's some difficult period, not only for the football club, but for Cisco Munoz as well. He's going to have to learn really, really quickly. Let's have a little look through your comments before we kind of wrap up and look ahead to Norwich. Jack Norman says, I'd be really cautious about bringing Sema in. He may well track back, but he genuinely offers us nothing. Kieran says Ngakia was promising. Luan says Sema isn't good enough in my opinion. That's an interesting debate about Ken. I personally think he just offers a bit more protection. I think when we play Rose, and particularly when we're betting,
I think that's where. Sorry to interrupt, Jake. But I think that's where the dilemma comes in, because you've got on the one hand Sema who's going to track back and protect it, but on the other hand, we're saying that there's not enough creativity in the side, and Ken's not our most creative player. So that's where the you kind of have to evaluate it game by game, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. I think I'm really torn. I just think, is it?
But this is the problem. We don't know our best team. We don't know what certain players are good at and what they're not good at, and that's what worries me ultimately.
Yeah, And you know what? Just going back to the starting 11, it feels like we've gone on a journey here. We started the starting 11, and we've gone through all the ups and downs. But just going back to the starting 11, I think for me, Sam, that was the concern, was that I put a tweet out. I said Cisco has nailed it with this lineup. That was the best team I thought he could put out.
Yeah.
Yet we didn't look like a team. There weren't really any patterns of play. I thought that you could see potentially with the fullbacks and the wingers, but the midfield, as we said, lacked creativity and
corners as well. Jesus, oh my! Stop it with the short corners. I beg, if any Watford players are watching this, please stop it with the short corners. No one wants it. It never works. The fans hate it. Just stop it. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. No, just going back onto that, that was our strongest team on paper, bar Feminine, right? And I put a tweet out basically saying we were simply out coached by Wolves, as we were against Brighton. And is there potentially, I don't want to go in on Cisco, but is there potentially that lack of experience in these situations? Is naivety coming into it a little bit? I did question him after Brighton. Was that harsh? What's your take on it, Sam?
It's look, yeah, it's such a difficult one. As I said at the start, we have to give him time, but at the same time, he needs to fix up quickly. And it's these 2 games which are massive for us and massive for our season. Even at this point, we're 4 games in, and we're already talking about his job. And I think that's ultimately a consequence as well of how the Pozzo model works. I think at any other club you'd be looking at, worrying about the sack after 3 bad games, even after getting promoted. But that's the reality of Watford Football Club. And if he's going to stay in a job, then ultimately he has to improve more than anyone else, and the players will follow.
Yeah, really, really interesting. We'll see how we'll get on at Norwich next week. Last couple of comments. TH says players not gelling, so many changes from last season, predictable. Rob says, I think one of the problems yesterday was that we were too slow with too much passing across the back. Yeah, agreed. Wolves could regroup and we had no options going forward. I absolutely agree with that, Rob. I think you're bang on there. Charlotte says, experimenting after the start of the season to find our best side is costing us points. Absolutely. Need to gel our best side together urgently. And I think as well, not knowing that best team after, having the pre-season, the international break is again something that isn't particularly good. And Ian says, I can't see Norwich for making Sky's game of the day next Saturday night.
I was happy. I saw the stat that Norwich are the only team now in English football who haven't picked up a point yet. The next game is Watford at home, so we all know what happens next.
Even Guardiola on the sideline, just insert that. I think we'll wrap it up, Sam. Really, You know what? I find these videos therapeutic, actually, because I'm really frustrated, actually, yesterday. And then when I've come on the video and talked about it, I feel a lot better. I've cracked open a smile. So big thank you to Sam for coming on today. As always, we'll be back this week. We'll do a little tactic show if you'd like to see that, guys. I'll try and turn myself into Gary Neville and talk through where it went wrong for Watford at the week. Karen says, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and click the like button. And AB sums up, well, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. That's where we're going to leave it, guys. Thank you very much for taking a fantastic week. Another loss, but we're in the Premier League and we're supporting Watford. Come on, you Hornets.